Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 88 of the Homegames podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, my name is Joseph, and today is Monday, August 16th, 2021. Today we are going to be talking about the continued TypeScripti-fication of our game engine, Squish.js, kind of wrapping up the current saga we've been going through for the past couple months. Also Unicode support, which I have kind of a whole story about that. And then some website updates that I talked about during our last episode of this, and some plans I had, and I will follow up on the status of those. Trash
And real quickly, we are remote this week.
Sorry. Oh yeah, we are. So it'll be slightly more trash than normal. The trash threshold's already high though, so I think it should be good for our hardcore fans, you know? real A1 since day one.
I'll start on the TypeScript stuff. So I put out a PR yesterday, and I saw you merged it in today. Basically, I converted all of Squish.js to be using TypeScript. I had some questions in the PR, but mostly, I'm happy we moved it over to TypeScript. I think it's going to help people understand what's going on. And step 2 for me is the unit testing stuff. I never worked with Mocha. I'd actually worked with Jest before, and then after looking into Jest versus Mocha, I came to find out that Jest was actually built for React first, and then like retroactively was made to be able to like apply to Node applications, whereas Mocha was built with like Node first. So I think what I'm going to do is use Mocha, but I've never worked with Mocha, so I was mostly reading documentation on it and going, I understand, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think I've used Mocha before. Honestly, my thing with testing frameworks is that I just need to write a unit test, and most of the time they do the same thing, and then I just have slightly different syntax to declare a unit test, and I don't really care as long as it lets me do this thing. So, whatever works.
Yeah, the reason I'm working with Mocha is, 1, to learn Mocha, and 2, if it was built with like Node first, we aren't going to be using React, so there's no reason for us to use Jest, which was like built specifically to test React applications, and other stuff was built on top of it to test other things. So that's kind of where I was coming from on there. I think there was a third one, but I don't even remember what the third option was.
Yeah,
maybe it was one of those two. I don't remember.
Because at the moment we just have our custom script runner stuff thing that you wrote,
which is all failing.
Yeah, I was going to mention, because all that stuff is failing, because I imagine because they need to be updated to account for new whatever stuff and not because of logic failures. So I was like, oh, whatever. Instead of waiting for another cycle on this, like I can just fix this stuff up. It's no problem. So that's why I went ahead and merged it. And I wrote down your questions. I wasn't really sure if you wanted me to address them in the PR, or I thought there'd be an opportunity to talk about it on here. It's whatever. But yeah, did you want me to try to answer those here?
Oh yeah, for sure. I left them in the PR specifically so that you could see them. Otherwise, I was going to bring them up here anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually don't know the answers. I saw your 2 questions. I kind of know the answer to one, and the other one I think I know the answer, but I have to think back to 2 years ago when I wrote this particular thing. So the first one is, why do we use on-state change when adding but not when removing? So are you talking about for a game node when someone removes a child from another node, we don't tell the listeners? Okay. I imagine that's just a miss, because I never needed to get a state change on removal, because the only listeners that I currently have that we currently have in Homegames on a node is the game stuff itself. So if I remove a child, I'm the only one really using it, so no one else would listen to it in the first place. So I never implemented that. So I imagine we could, if we ever wanted to have more stuff use listeners. I think we should implement it because it kind of completes that whole listener feature. But yeah, I mean, it's just a stupid thing I wrote. So, which is also 80% of the answers to my question, the questions.
Yeah, I was just curious about it. Mostly, I don't remember if I wrote this down in the PR or not, but one of the changes I made was, before, every time we added a child, we were pushing the on-state change. Basically, we're notifying everybody that a state change. I changed it so that only once all of the children have been added do we notify everybody. So they just get notified one time of everything now.
I saw that. That's super cool. That's a good optimization. I was thinking, because yeah, we've been talking off and on for the past year or so about optimizing stuff, and uh, that's a clear, simple optimization that we can make of just, yeah, we don't always need to notify everything of every change. When you know you're going to make 50 changes, just send one at the end. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So yeah, I like that. And then your other question was, why are there asserts in Squish?
Mm-hmm.
So asserts typically used in tests to say, hey, make sure that the result of this test value is the same as my expected value. And I used it in in Squish again because it was some stupid stuff I wrote quickly. But basically, I needed to quickly have a way to fail out when I knew that the message was not of the right type or my data that I was getting in wasn't correct. So instead of trying to like just add a conditional check of, oh, if this is whatever, then reject with an error message, or throw an error or something, it was just a very simple like assert whatever. So if I knew I had an error on that specific line, it's very clear what happened. It was just to quickly iterate on stuff, and I ended up leaving them in there because I don't think a lot, so I just kind of go forward and forget about everything. So that's that.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious. I saw that in there, and I was like, I don't know what this is for. I left it, but I was also like, I don't know what these are for.
But yeah, I liked it overall. I think I've gotten more familiar with TypeScript over the past month or so I've gotten more acquainted to just the way it looks and the way it reads and how it's slightly different from JavaScript, but pretty much the same thing. So yeah, going through the pull request is pretty easy. It was nice that we had 700 lines of changes, which if it were actual new methods and actual code changes or refactoring, it would be a lot to process. But it was just like, oh yeah, here's kind of a few self-explanatory changes, and then the rest of the stuff is pretty much the same. So it was easy to review, which was nice.
Hey, nice. Yeah, the other thing I want to do is I want to document in the README for Squish.js what all of the available pieces are. So like what game node is and what it contains, right? Because it has children, it has an ID, and it has an internal game node, which contains all of like the game node information, and just like have that written down somewhere. So if somebody was like, what the heck is going on in here? They can go and look at that stuff.
Well, I tried to make it, I tried to split it up into, this is a thing that has this functionality like an on-click or a color or a border or that kind of stuff, and split out different types of properties. But over time, I needed to add more to that, and I kind of, there was no clear line of responsibility of existing properties, and I kind of just, what's the word I'm looking for? Willy-nilly just define new stuff and didn't really think about the long-term implications. So that stuff might need to be revisited, which I addressed I mentioned in the pull request. Just some of that stuff is kind of goofy looking at it now, but that we didn't need to change it now.
Yeah, I didn't want to change too much logic. It was just like most of what I changed was I moved the children from the internal game node onto the game node itself. I didn't think the children should be right. It's like what we talked about last time, like the circularness between those two things. So game nodes now hold the children. Game nodes now, do that stuff like remove, add children, those things. So
sure. But anyway, the roadmap I just wanted to briefly mention. I just kind of have like a rough outline of stuff, kind of like what we talked about before, probably like a year ago at this point, of how I said I wanted to have a clear board of what we're working on and what we're planning on working on. And it's not interactive and fast and whatever, it's just a static HTML page, but it's a way for us to relatively quickly go and edit it and say, this is the stuff that we're going to work on next month, the month after. And so I have it up to June of next year, and then some kind of fuzzy ideas in the future. But I'm pretty sure everything on it we've talked about before, so nothing should be like too shocking. But if you click into any of them, you get a little explanation for why we're going to build it, which I think is kind of also how I want to do documentation in some way. Like you're talking about doing documentation. So I was thinking when I was doing this explanation of a technical thing on the website and kind of thinking who the audience is. And so if I say rewritten core components in TypeScript, for example, is the goal by October 2021, a lot of people know what that means and a lot of people don't. So how do you have information for all these different types of people so they can kind of get the gist of what you're saying or get the in-depth thing of what you're saying, like what they actually need from it? So I was thinking, have you ever played Professor Layton? Any of the Professor Layton puzzle games?
Mm-mm.
It's a puzzle game. Slow pace, whatever, that whole kind of thing. It's just like a point and click game, basically. But the way it does a hint system, so you have hundreds of puzzles in the game that you encounter, and they're just like a static screen with some blocks to move or some numbers to insert, whatever, or like a riddle or something like that. It's a lot of variety, but anyway, you can do hints, and so you have hint coins that you collect through the game, and you spend hint coins on hints, and there's 3 levels to a hint. So the first level will be like, look at the clock. And the second hint will be like, look at the hands of the clock. And then the third hint will be like, look, motherfucker, change the hour to 5. It's like, this is the answer. Like, just do the thing. So I was thinking basically having a tiered explanation on things, because if someone is like, hey, what is Homegames? And I'm like, oh, well, it's a single-threaded node process with event listeners and it's a loop and whatever. It's like, no one's going to listen to that. But if I listen to, or if I say, it uses a game server that you download, or it's a node game server that you download it, or it's a whatever, and you kind of have different levels of explanation. So I was just thinking of ways that we can do documentation that are accessible and kind of, I don't know, helpful to different types of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like tiered hints, basically. Like, hey, if you don't understand X, this will explain what X is. Oh, but we had to use term Y. If you don't understand what term Y is, we'll explain term Y in the next hint, kind of deal.
Yeah, where it's like, here's an explanation, and if you don't get this, click this button. Here's a simpler explanation. If you don't get that, here's this button. Here's a simpler explanation. Mm-hmm. And to make it not like insulting, but to just give the option. You say like, okay, you don't get this, that's okay. Here's a way that you, like, if this is confusing because we speak weird, then maybe here's a thing to tell us it's confusing, which is different from this is hard for me to understand. Like some way for them to kind of do something with the text, and give us feedback on it or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think it should be interactive in that way, in some way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do like the way that the roadmap has like top level, like really high level, like we're going to convert everything to TypeScript. If you click on it, it's like, here's what we mean by that. Like right. We're going to convert all of the like code to using TypeScript. I also like how you said that like the benefits of it are not something that we're going to describe there, because the benefits for like some of this stuff like that we're doing aren't individually important. It's like the sum of all of them is important.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was trying to make it informative, but not too much. And again, that's kind of why I was thinking of different tiers of explanations, kind of like how we talk about the podcast being a certain type of documentation, but it's a different thing than documenting code. It's a different thing than documenting kind of high-level components and stuff, Yeah. So just how we can have a good way to, I don't know, to have that categorization, I guess, or that split.
Yes, I agree. I do have a question for you. Okay. It's a very aggressive goal for TypeScript.
Oh yeah, it says on the top.
Depending
but also,
on
I was
what
gonna...
you mean for core. So go ahead.
So yeah, I think I wrote it in there. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, Homegames Core, Homegames Web, and Squish.js are core components. So at this point, I'm just taking Homegames Web, Homegames Core, and doing the same thing you did for Squish. Unless you want to do the TypeScripti-fication of that, but I'm not sure what you want to work on next.
I would like to do Web.
Okay.
Core, I'll leave to you, because that's a lot.
I think your Homegames Web, I would say at this point, is probably the most complicated component.
See, but here's the thing. Here's why I wanna look at it, because it is super complicated. But my question is, does it have to be super complicated?
No, it doesn't. But that's I think, I don't know. I guess it would be.
Because if you were going to look at it, right? Here's my thinking. If you look at web, right? You know what all of it does. So you can convert it relatively faster than I can to TypeScript. But if I look at it, I have to first figure out what's going on, and then I get to convert it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where, are we valuing... I agree. It's probably more beneficial to us if you go and learn that code better by doing that whole kind of thing. But it's the choice of, like if this were a business, I would do this because it would be faster, and then it would create some sort of technical debt where it's like, oh, that guy knows everything still, and we have to
tribal
move.
knowledge.
Yeah, it would make everything worse. And I guess, I don't know. I guess generally speaking, this past year for Homegames has felt a lot like work. So I'm trying to just get through this shit so I can go back to the like making cool things that I enjoy, because it's, you know, it's cool, but goddamn, I just want to do like the creative stuff, and it's not that fun at the moment. It's a lot of just, you know, it's a lot of code maintenance and like cleanup and what you have to do. But
yeah, I mean,
whatever.
if you wanna leave doing the TypeScript conversion to me, I will do it. I will do both of them.
No,
It's okay to me. I'm okay with it because I had to learn a little bit about TypeScript to do it for Squish in the first place. Because, like, I didn't know you could cast in TypeScript or how to cast. I knew you could, but I didn't know what the syntax was, but I learned the syntax for it.
the angle brackets, right? I said that.
Yeah, those angle brackets, internal game node casts.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess like this roadmap was me sitting down and saying, what do I, if I were just sitting down and working on Homegames, what would I do and when, and when would I want it to be done by? So, like it says at the top, they're very fuzzy dates. Like I don't actually expect everything to be done when everything is listed here. It's just goals. And to me, rewriting 2 components is not that long, but you know, whatever, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Very general, I guess.
Because like what I was saying, what I want to do is look at each of these, change them to TypeScript, add documentation for whatever is available to people, and then add unit testing on top of it. It's like basically I want us to have at the end of it like TypeScriptified so that if somebody was going to use it, they could see what they need to pass in and what that type needs to be and what that means for each type.
Right.
What do they even have available? That was like one of the big questions when I was working on games is what do I have available even? Like what does Squish do? What does Squish give me? What do I need to pass it? What do I get out of it? Like those kinds of questions. So I think TypeScript helps. I think having documentation would help, and then unit testing, it just so that we can go forward if it's like we don't get into regression, because that's one thing that's been killing me mentally is regression. It's like, well,
says the guy who just broke all of our Squish tests.
You know, did I break the tests or did I prevent them from working? There's a difference.
Pretty philosophical, I guess.
I also have a question for you, kind of in the wrap-up portion of this, but
okay,
I'll hold on to it for now.
I also had a thing about the unlisted game stuff that you mentioned in the last episode, where you were asking basically if there would ever be a time when we had support for private GitHub repositories, because at the moment all of the code that we pull in needs to be public, and I still don't think that we would need to pull in a private GitHub repository, but I do think in Homegames we should have the idea of like an unlisted game, because if you wanted to, for example, say here's an unfinished version of what I'm working on, I'm not going to publish a full version. I'm just going to put out a version. You know what I mean? Like there's a distinction between publishing a version of a game and like a beta release.
Yeah.
So I think that we can have kind of like a shared only game. It doesn't have to be a public thing. So I kind of just wanted to mention that I had given that some thought, and I think that's what I want to do. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't. Your explanation for why we wouldn't use private repos, I was like, I kind of get it. Like, I'm kind of behind the not using of private repos. Even if somebody was going to be using it as like a beta, I would say just they can make it public and it would be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I guess it's kind of like if all of this stuff is going to go into a catalog, you don't want the catalog to be full of untested beta versions of games. So you kind of want to have a thing where you can go and play what you know are what people say are final versions or whatever they claim to be, you know, almost good enough to be played at least.
If somebody wanted to do that though, wouldn't it be better for us to have a flag that's like, hold off on reviewing this?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Create a new game.
To have a distinction between a real publish and like a don't, like this isn't real publish.
Like a draft.
kind of basically like an unlisted YouTube video.
Yeah.
Where it's just, yeah, it's something that I want to make available, but only to people I want to make available to, which at the moment is the only way that we can have games published, but eventually that will be a more publicly discoverable thing, and we don't want everything to be publicly discoverable because some things just aren't finished, and the developer should be able to say that it's not finished.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be that flag or whatever, yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Okay, and then yeah, just for the Unicode support, it was kind of a rabbit hole that I wanted to talk about. I know I said I didn't want to add any more features to the game engine or to any of that kind of stuff this year. I was just kind of doing documentation, unit tests, whatever, which is what we have on the roadmap. But I did mention 2 weeks ago that I wanted to add a game version selector to the game modal stuff, right? When you go to a game that someone published, there's a version of it, which we just talked about, but when they publish a new version, at the moment, you can't go back to an older one, but I want to make that possible. So I was thinking of adding a version dropdown, where at the top of the play button, there's a little thing that says version X or whatever, and you can click it, and it'll bring down the thing, and you can see all of them. So I was thinking of a way to add an arrow, a small arrow, which I can do with an image. I would have to make that image myself, though. So I was thinking, okay, well, I'll just go get like the Unicode character for an arrow. And I realized that we don't support Unicode, but I just wanted to see what happened knowing it would break. So I put in the arrow into the game, like just copied and pasted the character. And then when it made it through on the other side, it was the 1/4, like it was 1/4, a small little representation of 1/4 as a fraction.
Like the subscript 1/4. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because, the way that we store text in Homegames, the way that we send text in Homegames is just ASCII text. We only support 0 to 255 in each entry in the array. So each entry is only one letter or whatever, and so that's just ASCII text. You know, you have regular English like A through Z in capital and lowercase, numbers and symbols, but nothing else. So it was overflowing over 255 for whatever the actual code was, like the actual number value was for that down arrow, and it was overflowing to hit some weird number, which was just 1/4. I don't know, I thought that was pretty funny. But the end result of me adding Unicode support, which I did, was that we now have emoji support. I modified Squish.js to change that from 1 byte to 3 bytes. So now the way that we store it is different, and we can store or we can use a much larger number as our maximum, which includes basically every Unicode character you can find and a bunch of emojis. So I added a unit test with like the crying laughing emoji and the 100 symbol as a text node, and I confirmed it works. So we can make some pretty some pretty good stuff now.
Oh no, this is gonna become cursed, isn't it?
But it's also nice because, you know, admittedly, as an American, I don't give a fuck about anything that's not America. So I never really thought about adding other language support. But with this, we can support like the different, you know, like accented letters or whatever kind of characters in other languages. So truly Mr. Worldwide now. It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
It should be nice. I'll know we're worldwide when we have to pay people to translate into like Brazilian Portuguese and then also Portuguese Portuguese.
Oh yeah.
That's when I know we've made it.
That seems like a very specific goal. I don't know if we're gonna hit it, to keep it a full buck with you, but you know, dream your dreams.
I don't know. Well, so here's the thing: is a lot of software will be like, here's Portuguese, but big enterprise software will be like, here's Brazilian Portuguese, and that's when you know, like, oh, they got money. They got money to pay for somebody to also translate this into Brazilian Portuguese for like, I don't know, like a 4% difference or whatever between the two. I don't know how much actually there's a difference.
So what if we start with those translations to make it look like we got money, even though, like, we're just prioritizing the little shit to look, you know? It's like we're losing
here's the problem. Yeah. I don't know anyone who can translate into Brazilian Portuguese or regular Portuguese.
Maybe it doesn't even exist. It's just like to flex. It's an imaginary language that people convert to.
Brazil's an imaginary place. Is there that meme that like Norway doesn't exist or something like that? Like Sweden or Norway doesn't exist?
I'm not familiar with that, but I believe it. I already believe it doesn't exist just from you telling me it might be a meme. Never really thought about Norway like
Those
that.
countries definitely exist, but there's supposed to be like a meme where it's just like a big like it's just big ocean, and I don't actually know why that became a thing, but I think it starts off by asking people if they've ever met anyone from Sweden or Norway, and
I,
I've never met anyone from Sweden, but I know people from Norway.
I,
Hey.
as do I. But yeah, I guess that's it for my home game stuff plus Norway talk. You know,
That's right.
it's our new segment.
I did have a question for you. Have you ever used a Have you ever done mutation testing?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay. I don't know either.
I thought you were gonna go on a whole thing about like, well, actually, we should do it because what is the idea that you make sure that an object is not mutated, that everything is mutable throughout the process?
The idea is that I'm gonna give you like somebody out there who actually knows what mutation testing is will be like, this is like the most like kindergarten explanation of it everywhere. Basically, when you run your unit tests, it goes through the mutator goes through and adds mutants, which is basically like it'll negate conditionals in your if statement, and it'll see if your unit test still pass, right? Because if your unit test still passes, even though that condition got flipped, then your unit tests are garbage, basically.
Right.
I've never used it, but it's supposed to show robustness in unit testing. I've recently learned about it, so I was curious if you ever worked with it before.
No, that's an interesting idea. I guess I never, yeah, I don't give a lot of thought to unit testing in home games in general, just because, you know, same thing as always. Like, I'd rather manually test because stuff changes, and if the game still works, the game still works, or whatever. But that is something that I will be thinking about more over the next year or so, because now that other stuff is you know, not so crazy. So yeah, that's a super cool idea. I like the idea, but I don't know how much I would actually care about it in practice. Like, if that thing told me, oh, hey, this if statement might not be doing the thing, it's like, you know, well, okay, I can just turn off notifications for this because I'm still going to write bad unit tests. Like, I don't know how much it would really do anything for me besides just telling me I suck, which I already know.
Well, I think it'll fail like, if we set it up right, it would fail on CI.
Yeah, but I just merged code that failed CI today.
No, you didn't.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how much use you get out of it, but from what I understand, it's supposed to like test robustness in unit testing. I also know that there's a library for it called Striker, but I don't even know, or Striker IO or whatever. I honestly don't know. I only found out about it today, or yesterday or something like that. I was looking at something else, and they were like, you should use mutation testing here. And I was like, what is mutation testing? I know what integration and unit and end-to-end testing is. And they're like, mutation testing is you add mutants to your code. And I was like, I don't know what that means either.
It's so crazy how people make up shit. Like, you know, it's like every word or everything has to be some concept or some like new field of whatever, new type of thing. It's like, man, just fucking add an exclamation point to your if statements. It's not that big of a deal.
Just write your unit tests more robustly, bro. Get that
Even
100% code coverage.
Yeah, which is a totally useless number. If you have 100% code coverage, it's like you're faking your code in some way, because no one ever actually hits that. Like, it's 97 and then you add hacks to hit that other 3. It's like, well, we have this constructor that never actually is executed, so we have a test that just passes
through it
false
and
to
removed new lines.
Yeah.
It's technically all one line. You have 100% code coverage.
That's pretty sure that's not how it works, but it would have been a case that you had to cover if you built your own code coverage utility. You would have had to handle that case. Some psycho puts their entire thing on one line.
I'm glad I didn't. I read how those work, and I was just like, this is too big brain for me. Just like how writing your own mutation tester is too big brain for me too. I honestly don't know. It's on like GitHub. They have a GitHub for it, and they answer on Stack Overflow. And I was like, that must mean they're very smart people. I can't do those things.
Yeah, it's true. You need to be smart to post on Stack Overflow. That's a rule.
That's right. That's my experience anyway.
I was gonna say something. Oh, since you're doing the documentation stuff and unit testing, basically I had that as my goal just because didn't think about you, which is my fault. So now I'm realizing I have this time. I want to make a game. I've been wanting to make a game still. So I'm just going to make a game. I'm going to spend the rest of my year making a game because
Hell yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm going to go and rewrite everything and do TypeScript. And I was just kind of dreading it. So if you're telling me you're excited about it, or at least that you're willing to, then yeah, do that. And I'm going to go figure out. I think I'm going to go figure out what I want to make, and then I'm going to make it. But I'm also going to add other stuff around it. Like, I'm not just going to make a game. I'm going to do some sort of documentation or some sort of output that'll make everything else in Homegames core better as a result. Still trying to contribute to the thing that you're doing, but not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to add something during my game building process. I'm not just trying to make a game by itself.
This man's literally trying to add side effects to making a video game.
I want to have like I don't know. I think it would be cool to do something where you basically record yourself making a game and cut together all the interesting parts. Because I already make the game.
What parts? You cut out, sorry.
The interesting parts.
Oh, okay.
So if it's like, basically a very organic version of that, like building a game video stuff that we made, where it's kind of like, okay, I'm rushed because I'm trying to build a specific thing in a certain amount of time. But if it's like, no, I just made this game and kind of like Terry Davis style, just like walk through your code, or like not like show you everything that you're building, but without the Terry Davis commentary. I don't know
who that is.
He's the guy who made Temple OS.
Crazy man. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, he did cool stuff basically showing his project to people who are interested, which is kind of what we're doing. So I think it'd be cool to do something like that while I make my game.
I hope one day somebody doesn't hear our names and go, oh, those crazy guys.
It would be an accomplishment, unless it was like a bad crazy thing. But whatever. It's probably fine.
Also, to clarify, I'm not excited to convert it to TypeScript. I'm excited to understand how Homegames works on a fundamental level.
Well, I want you to know I was reading Homegames web app.js.
Oh, you cut out real bad. I don't know what you just said.
I was reading a Homegames web's app.js file this past week, and I saw some code, and I was like, holy shit, that's exactly what Yazeed was talking about. What the fuck does that line do? Why is it like three new lines long, and it has 4 different parts where it's indexing into something in a row? It's like, this is insane. So yeah, that kind of stuff. You're gonna run into a bunch of that shit. So be prepared, I guess. But it's all there.
No worries. I didn't really clean up Squish.js, right? Like, I looked at what the squishers and unsquishers did, and I just left them for the most part. I made like maybe slight modifications to them. Yeah. So that still needs to happen to Squish. I was mostly interested in getting a TypeScripti-fication started so that we could look at it. Because I honestly didn't know how much experience you'd have with TypeScript.
It doesn't seem like you even need much. It's just things have types is pretty much all you need to kind of abide by.
There's like some more stuff that you can do too. There's like some very strict things you can do in TypeScript, like describe certain attributes as private and static and stuff like that. And, TypeScript will give you an error if somebody tries to access a private variable on an object. And then you can mark some things as public and stuff like that. There's like more utility in TypeScript that we don't necessarily need, because the things that are private, I don't think we even allow you to get at. So, or like private, we don't really allow you to get at. So it's fine.
Yeah, I still have much to learn with TypeScript, but I guess that's the nice thing is that at least for the initial conversion stuff, there's nothing really that new or surprising, which is cool. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. Well, I had nothing else. Nothing else in the notes. Did you have anything that you wanted to mention? Questions, concerns, comments?
I don't think so. I asked my question about my mutation testing. I don't have anything else.
Yep. Still don't know what that is. And,
Look it up. Maybe you would understand it. Maybe you should read it and then you should explain it to me, because I read it and I was like, I don't know what's going on.
No, dude, I don't know what's going on either. Like, I was just thinking when I was doing the Unicode stuff, I was like, do I even know what I'm doing? Like, should I explain what I'm doing, or am I just doing this? You know what I mean?
You had that moment where you're like, what is Unicode?
Exactly. Because actually, yes, I did once, and then I put in the emoji I wanted to test, and I realized I only had 2 bytes and I needed more space. So I was like, well, what's the upper limit on Unicode? How many emojis should we support? I don't know, but I guess all of them is the answer. But I really can't explain.
Even the like skin color specific one. I don't know if those are different emojis or not, but I want to support those too.
I imagine they are modifiers on an existing, but they're a different code. They're like a different code value.
Yeah, they have to be a different code.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah, well, whatever. We represent some amount of emojis. We could put that on like a little sticker. some emoji support.
We represent a subset of Unicode. We support a subset of Unicode. You know, that'll be true even when we support all of Unicode. A set is a subset of itself. There you go. There's some math set theory for you.
We will end it on that, I suppose. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nytan on Bandcamp. That is Nytan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at Homegames.io. Our website is homegames.io. You can send us a message at the bottom of the page using the contact form. Tell us what you think about the project or the podcast or the website or anything at all. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. No, not next week.
Oh, 2 weeks from now. Fuck, I did it again. We'll see you next 2 weeks. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
We'll see you in half a month. Bye-bye.
Bye.